Hi, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll be going through BLACKPINK's newest single, Pink Venom. I'll go over its lyrical content and how I interpret its meaning, as well as how it ties in sonically with the video. I'm mainly here to talk about the art and how I interpreted it. My actual opinion of the song itself will take a bit of a backseat. Feel free, however, to share your own opinion and, of course, share your opinion on what you thought of my interpretation. Before I get into the video, I want to do a quick rundown of what I think the concept is about. BLACKPINK for this comeback is pretty much showing their own artistic identity. The concept itself is supposed to represent them influencing the watcher in the same way that they were once influenced. Now, there's two main topics I want to dive into. The song itself, meaning the way it sounds and the way it's lyrically connected to the sound, and the music video's set and wardrobe. I'll be going through the video in real time, explaining my thoughts per scene, giving my interpretation on the song first, and then set second. All right, let's start analyzing. Okay, starting with the intro scene, we're greeted by this almost sinister chant. Right off the bat, I think this evokes like a cult-esque feeling, as if they're either trying to lure you in or as if the people chanting this are hypnotized themselves. Meaning it's kind of up for interpretation whether it's the BLACKPINK girls themselves singing this or if it's the fans singing it. On screen, we don't actually see anyone chanting it, still leaving it up for interpretation. What we do see is Jisoo playing the instrument. Now I looked it up, and this is actually a komengo, a traditional Korean instrument. And on top of that, we see Jisoo's nails being painted in a traditional Korean pattern, really driving home the Korean aesthetic that they're going for. It is essential to realize that the first influence that they wanted to show in the video was their Korean influence, showing right where it started for them. The people surrounding her are hypnotized by what she's playing. They're wearing these VR headsets, signifying, in my opinion, a sort of brainwashed feeling. Someone reminds me of that Totally Spies episode where they're wearing those like spiders under their heads and they get brainwashed, whatever. I would assume that it's supposed to represent the fans of BLACKPINK watching their content. All right, and then the next scene, we get Jennie rapping the intro verse. I think straight off the bat, there's a reference to Kick in the Door by B.I.G. BLACKPINK has referenced this before, but it is important to note that this is in its origin a hip-hop reference, showing, I think, their first influence in the video, after, of course, the Korean influence. Then, right after, Jennie says, "Swing the Coco," obviously referring to her brand ambassador deal with Chanel, which originated from Coco de Chanel. She then proceeds to say that the watcher should not join in, showing that while you're supposed to be encapsulated by their influence, it does not mean that you can do what BLACKPINK does. Of course, BLACKPINK doesn't do what their influences do either. You're supposed to carve your own path. Herein comes the first shooting reference with Pop Pop. I think many more will come in the song, and it's a way of indicating that their influence has reached someone. Basically, a figure of speech. Then the beat gives off this Middle Eastern vibe. I think it's pretty on trend right now to do something like that. That's all I really have to say about it. As for the wardrobe, I think it all plays into each other. The look is a garment inspired by Middle Eastern wear, tying in the Middle Eastern instrument you hear during the segment. That Chanel reference is made even more obvious with the caged bird and the monster truck in the back. It has fangs, meaning that it's supposed to represent the venom that you're talking about in the title of the song. Her eyes at the beginning are colored pink, indicating that she's supposed to represent the X Factor. Lisa does the same thing as Jennie by starting off her segment with a reference, namely Rihanna's Pond Replay with 1 by 1 and 2 by 2. She then proceeds to say that everything collapses at the flick of her fingertips, indicating how successful her comebacks are. And then Lisa proceeds to, from how I interpret it, somewhat diss the rest of the industry by saying that they're wearing fake clothes, meanwhile BLACKPINK is wearing like actual designer stuff. And then she says that their shows are not worth her money because they're wearing all this fake shit. Now, as for the music video set, I think it's pretty clever. The Middle Eastern trend continues. We see Lisa entering the tomb while she's stepping on broken glass, I think indicating how they are shattering the world every time they have a comeback. And she does that in heels, kind of referencing we're the only gang to run the game in high heels. When Lisa says she wouldn't give any money in a dissing way, she is standing in the tomb, um, which I think is pretty interesting. The Egyptians used to believe that stealing from tombs would put a curse on you, creating almost a double meaning for what she just sang about it. Then we also see Lisa biting into a black apple with a pink inside, showing that taking the bite out of the apple made her have those pink eyes. Now, I think that apple might represent them taking a bite out of other influences and acquiring what other artists have already done before them. Basically being influenced, right? BLACKPINK is represented with the apple, obviously with the black and the pink. Also, Pink Venom is obviously a play on words for BLACKPINK. Next up, we got Rose, showing the aftermath of biting in the apple. She sings how her pretty exterior will turn venomous tonight by comparing herself to a plant, and then proceeds to speak to the artists by saying that they've stolen their souls. And then she makes another reference to one of these artists, namely Taylor Swift. I think what she just sang kind of confirmed what I thought about the apple. They're stealing the souls, and that's what biting that apple was supposed to represent. Obviously, they don't steal their soul literally. What they mean is they're influenced, and you can tell by the art that they produce themselves. Now, visually, Rosé is in this tar lake where her heart is now covered in that same tar. I think this is supposed to represent the artist's influence over them yet again, just driving home that whole idea. So yeah, obviously, by the way, a pink heart, it's like a heart is pink, I mean, and you see the heart covered in black. So again, it's like pink Venom, you know, they keep doing that. All right, then we finally get Jisoo singing. She sings about a fire so beautiful it will put you to sleep. I think essentially talking about this X factor that some artists possess, turning their fans obsessed with them. I think what they mean is you're so obsessed that you're in a trance and you're just mindlessly watching us. I mean, not really mindlessly, just more so like, now what I also noticed is that this part does not have an American influence. Maybe it has a Korean influence. I'm not sure. It already contained a Korean influence, so if it does contain a Korean influence lyrically, please let me know. I'm really curious. Now, visually, we are back at the intro scene. I think a little extra, what I found when I was watching this again, was one of the people with the headsets is actually Lisa herself. Now, I think this is playing into the fact that Lisa is the youngest, and that as the youngest, you learn from the older members. And then on top of that, Lisa actually came to South Korea as a trainee, not knowing Korean, as she's Thai. So I thought it was really cool to see her here. I think it may have referenced that bit of their life. All right, finally we get to the chorus. We've seen this almost anticlimactic vocal delivery with a continuous Arabic trap beat. I think this is really the core identity of the song, and it does not try to make you feel alive. Instead, it just perpetuates what they had already been singing about. I don't think them not having a drop that goes heavy is unexpected, because if you listen to the song, they're actually spoiling what's about to happen sonically. Like she's saying, so it's a fire so beautiful, it'll put you to sleep. And this chorus represents exactly that. Then as for the actual chorus's lyrics, we hear straight to your dome. I think this is a double entendre. It implies a shot to the head, but it also references BLACKPINK having a dome tour. It's kind of a way of saying BLACKPINK in your area. Then next, we talk about the visuals for a second. I think the shot to the head is immediately confirmed. We see them doing this motion. And in the background, you can see the tomb that Lisa bit the apple out of, possibly showing that the chorus is actually a direct result of them having all that influence. So far, all of the verses were sort of their influences. Meanwhile, the chorus, I don't think contains a sort of reference. It's just Blackpink, you know what I mean? All right, we have a pretty big change of sound with that. The beat is unmistakably a 90s hip hop reference, which I think is clever, as some people may have not caught on to the 90s references by this point. They take it up even further by saying about how they're actually shooting, with the black ammo and Rambo stuff, using it as a figure of speech to imply someone has become a fan when shot. They've done this before, like in Boom Baya, they make like a Rambo reference. But here it's very clearly about them spreading the influence, because black ammo is supposed to represent the Venom. Then Lisa makes another designer reference with Celine, and Lisa's actually the actual ambassador of Celine. So I think that all ties in nicely with their real life. Then Jenny makes another hip hop reference by saying how they're riding, meaning they're actually going away from the cops. This is a common trope in hip hop music. Even when you search up just like riding as a music video title, you'll find Chamillionaire, where he's singing about how he's actually not riding. Now, how he uses riding in that song is he's basically saying that he is not riding, meaning he's not stealing, meaning the cops have no reason to pull them over. Now, what Jenny has done is she has taken this, put a corny spin on it by saying she is actually stealing. She is saying that it doesn't matter because they're actually already up in the sky with a jet. And finally, we have the final reference where Jenny says, like a slow dance, what they've already used in their previous songs. I think for me, I'm going to give my opinion on this real quick because I just think it's so funny and tongue-in-cheek. When I first watched this without captions, I didn't really know what to think because it feels like such a parody vibe. But then now after I saw it with the lyrics, I realized like it is supposed to be a parody vibe, and it's supposed to be corny, and it's supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. And I think it's just fun. Then visually, there's a lot of nice things to unpack. The bouncing cars, the background dancers like part of their crew, Lisa wearing that 19s, 2000s thong, Jenny wearing that Manchester United top with dripping pearls. I think it just all really pulls home the corniness of it and like the parody vibe of it. Yeah. On top of that though, I do think that some of the lyrics that they use does actually represent them in real life. Despite that, I don't think it's supposed to be taken seriously. Then we have Jisoo, who repeats the first verse. That's why I'll only talk about the visuals for a second. Same for Rose upcoming. Jisoo represents the calmness with the moon, watering the bonsai with like pink dust. I really do think all of Jisoo's scenes in this music video are basically her representing Blackpink's Korean and Asian heritage. Then we get Rose, who clearly represents like a fiery sun brought home with the fiery mosaic in the background. We finally see the first direct rock influences with the guitar. Also, Rose's hair. It is clearly a spin on Blondie's lead singer Debbie Harris's hair from like back in the 80s. Blondie was like a big rock group. This clearly shows another influence on Blackpink. I think so far, what I find interesting is, far as the American influences go, we just have pop music. Pretty much hip hop in the 90s was the pop music of now. We have the actual pop music of now with Rihanna and Taylor Swift. And then we have the pop music of the 80s, Debbie Harry. What hip hop and rock have in common is that they are both kind of rebellious. And I think a big essence of Blackpink is that they're also rebellious. Korean standards for how a woman is supposed to behave, I'm pretty sure is very far straying from what Blackpink does on stage and how Blackpink like portrays themselves in their songs. And it is very obvious why Blackpink would be influenced by these rebellious American movements. And before I continue real quick, I just want to say that even though when looking back on the decades, hip hop and rock feel super rebellious, while pop music feels not as rebellious, but that doesn't mean that Rihanna and Taylor Swift don't have rebellious themes to them. Obviously, Rihanna is a woman being sexual and that being okay. Though that has always been a thing, Rihanna didn't necessarily start with that. Of course, Rihanna is also impacted by that. And on top of that, she is also just a black woman in the industry. Then we have Taylor Swift. At first glance, may seem like a very cookie cutter pop artist, but I do think that her lyrical content is kind of subverting the idea that men can just sing about women like they've been doing for like decades long. That's totally fine. And then when Taylor Swift does it, it's like hearsay or whatever. Okay, then we get to the next chorus, the church pulling in from before with the sun mosaic. I think what I said earlier with the chorus, I still stand by after having heard the other verses. Talk about the set for a second. We see this, I'm assuming like a holy place. We see the deer in the background representing something from their Korean essence, as the deer were divine beings in Korean mythology, connecting this world to the next one. And then we see these rose petals everywhere. I think that is supposed to represent them having kind of already shot people. I think the rose petals is supposed to represent blood. What they're showing here is that they've already influenced people. And with the way that the scene is set up by looking kind of Korean with the deer in the background, I think it's supposed to represent them having already taken Korea by storm. Okay, then we go to the bridge. Here we hear them saying that the Watcher does not stand a chance. Basically going on with the whole shooting theme. Blackpink has already spread their pink potion. Pink potion in this sense is supposed to represent their own artistic influence. And then Jisoo says they created a pink ocean before your eyes. This is obviously a reference to their pink light sticks. When K-pop fans are in a concert and they all turn on their light sticks, it looks like an ocean. I don't know, for example, if it would be BTS, it would be like yellow light stick, yellow ocean, or I don't know what BTS's color is, but you get the point. We see a direct reference to rock and roll, and more so, we see more references to shooting in the form of another hip hop reference saying, "Give me all that smoke." Then Jisoo, just like she spoiled the first chorus, she now spoils that what is coming is a drop. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's funny. The singer is singing what is about to happen with the song. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it's funny. Okay, I'm gonna stop it right here. Obviously, this was not the whole outro, but I want to talk about the first 8 and last 8 seconds separately. The first 8 seconds is them shooting, and that's really it, pretty much. Sonically, we just hear the actual drop. Then for the actual set, I think is really interesting because what I said earlier about the second chorus, where it's supposed to represent their Korean dominance, I think it now represents them going into this bunker where these people are that are not yet influenced by them, and then Blackpink is coming to shoot them to finally spread their influence over them as well by looking at the bunker and the way it's worn down, and then you see the cars in the background, which are not worn down at all. Them not being worn down implies that Blackpink just drove into this bunker. All right, and then for the last 8 seconds, it gets even more interesting because we hear that chant come back. Indicating that the first 8 seconds they managed to like shoot at people and influence them, and then you hear this like chant indicating that people are now influenced. Then for the set, we see that little bunker situation in the background. What we get here is all of these flowers going back at what they were singing in the verses, saying like, "I'll be a venomous flower tonight." So yeah, I think that kind of covers it. I didn't talk about all of the outfits, but I think a lot of them are kind of self-explanatory. Like I said, all of the outfits in the chorus and I think also in the outro is just supposed to represent what Blackpink would like wear on tour and stuff like that, or just in photo shoots, whatever. It's like their own artistic identity. Meanwhile, in the verses, it's a lot more inspired wear. Apart from that, I think sonically, I explained everything that I wanted to explain. So yeah, to tie it all together, sonically, the song represents their influences, how they now are thanks to that influence, and how they will influence you as the listener. And then the video is supposed to represent basically what they're singing about. I think every part of the video really tied in with what they were singing about in that moment. Pink Venom represents their influence. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. That was my analysis. Let me know what you thought. And yeah, I hope to see you next time.